I think I was possibly almost abducted as a child. I am almost 30 now, and I only just realized recently that a man possibly tried an attempt to abduct me when I was a child. I was watching a creepy video on YouTube, and it suddenly hit me that I was in a very similar situation and never understood the severity until that moment over 15 years later. I grew up in a very small town of about 1,000 people. There was not much to do, so my friends and I spent a lot of time walking in the spring and summer months. The town was small, but Route 2 runs right through it, and it is a highway that is the northernmost east-west major US highway, spanning 2,571 miles. It was and is a quiet town, but you definitely see some out-of-state cars passing through. When I was about 13 or 14 years old, I was walking along Route 2 to go to my best friend's house. There was a white spot off to the side of the road where I was, and a man on a blue motorcycle with a matching helmet pulled into it. I could only see his eyes through the helmet. He seemed kind and had a nice, non-threatening sounding voice. He seemed young. If I had to guess, I would say that he was in his 20s or early 30s at the latest. I remember our conversation very well, even though I haven't given it much thought over the years. I remember being very flattered and naive. When he pulled in, he asked me where the nearest bridge was, and I told him there was one about 7 miles north in the next town over, or about 20 miles back from the direction he came from. He thanked me and proceeded to tell me how pretty I was, and asked to take me to lunch. I thanked him for the compliment and told him that I was going to a friend's house. This went on for quite a long time, I would say every bit of 5 minutes. He kept telling me how great of a time we would have, and that he didn't know his way around and could use my help picking a place to eat. I was trying to be nice, but kept reminding him that I was on my way to a friend's, and also saying things like he only had one helmet. He said that I could wear his for the short distance and that he would bring me right back into town after we ate, and that it wouldn't be long at all. He only gave up when I pointed out my friend's bright blue house that was about 1 block away, and that she and her family were expecting me any minute. This was kinda truthful, but a small lie. She knew that I was coming that day, but I always told my friend that I would walk down after I woke up the next day when we had plans. And I never gave her a call to tell her when that would be. I always slept in late during the summer. My friend's mom was always smoking on their porch, but her back was facing my direction, so she didn't see the interaction, but I could see her. She would have been there fighting off this man in a heartbeat if he had actually tried forcing me onto his bike. All I would have had to do was yell for her. I thought I was invincible at the time and so grown up. I thought that I was tough and that nobody would ever harm me. Like I said, I remember being very flattered, which is so stupid of me. I remember thinking how fun it sounded, and that I would get to ride on a motorcycle for the first time. I actually considered getting on a stranger's bike, because I thought I could take on anything and that it sounded exciting. The only reason that I didn't go was because I knew how angry my parents would be if they found out. I now know that my parents wouldn't have been angry at all, but relieved if I had actually gone and made it back. It is funny how you process things at a young age. Regardless, I am so happy that I didn't want to make them mad. It could have saved my life. Looking back, there was no way that he didn't think I was a child. I was still in my awkward stage and looked very much like my age at the time. What freaks me out looking back is that he asked me how to get to the nearest bridge and wanted me to go with him in that direction, and that he was so persistent. He could have been out of the state in 7 minutes, and nobody would have even realized that I was gone until much later that day. My friend and I were followed in the forest by a creepy laughing woman. I'll preface this by saying we were 12 or 13 at the time, and my friend and I often snuck out of either of our houses during sleepovers for late-night walks. This was the basis of this terrifying encounter, and it stopped us from ever sneaking out after dark again. My friend lived opposite a huge forest, so her house was the preferred choice to sneak out of for us to roam around at night, because the forest was more scary and thrilling, and we always took flashlights, food and blankets so we could camp out for a couple of hours before going back home again. Well, on this fateful night, we inadvertently fell asleep instead of staying awake. So when my friend suddenly jolted me up from sleep, it was past 3 a.m. A lot later than we usually snuck out. We grabbed our essentials and creeped out of the back door into the cold and dark night. Frost crunched underfoot as we crossed the deserted road, and as we reached the entrance to the forest, we noticed how pitch black and completely silent it was, unnervingly so. We turned on our torches and stepped onto the uneven path into the forest, the light illuminating the trees swaying in the icy wind. We stepped on fallen sudden leaves and bark as we made an unsteady but familiar way into our favorite part of the forest. Our cold breath, the only noise to invade the deafening silence. We reached a small hut we constructed one afternoon, made entirely of sticks, purely for the purpose of having some shelter for our campouts. There were times that vandals or other kids damaged our hut, but for the most part it stayed intact. But on this occasion it was completely destroyed, like a harbinger of worse to come. We were just deciding to just call it a night and come back later on that day to repair the hut, when we heard it. This loud, shrieking giggle that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. My friend and I jumped in shock and looked at each other like, what the? We were completely freaked out. The eerie and unnatural giggle rang out again, contradicting the silence and making my body break out in goosebumps. Someone is in here, my friend whispered to me, looking utterly terrified. We have to go now. Her voice of rationale made it even more scary and unnerving to me that someone was in the forest with us at 3 o'clock in the morning. We just looked at each other in assent and took off running in unison, our footsteps navigating the path as naturally as we could from muscle memory, our uneven gasps of air punctuating the giggling that seemed to be following us, getting closer and closer. Our torch's light went up and down with our fast movements, illuminating random patches of the trees and bushes, as we finally saw a small sliver of light as we came to the forest entrance. Running out of the forest, we didn't stop until we reached the back door of my friend's house, and almost collapsed in a breathless heap of relief to be safe. Then my friend's eyes went wide, and she nudged me, pointing a shaky finger to the across the road. A haggard woman of indeterminate age was standing at the forest entrance, giggling that awful, horrifying giggle, and was waving over at us. We screamed and ran inside and looked out of my friend's bedroom window through the smallest gap in the curtain, and could still see the woman standing there. Worse yet, she was staring right at us, as if she knew we were there. We could tell she was still giggling that hideous, appalling laugh. She turned very slowly and walked back into the forest again. We never went back to that forest, nor went out after dark again.